Welcome back to Broncos Beat. Alexis Perry here alongside Cecil, Lammey, Solomon Wilcots, and James Palmer. Guys, last week PFF released their top 50 players heading into the 2020 season. Aaron Donald, he ranked number 1, but I had to scroll down for quite a while until I came across our very own Von Miller. He was at number 25. So let's just start with that, where Von Miller was on this list, right smack dab in the middle. Do you feel like 25 was too low, too high, or just right for the Super Bowl 50 MVP?
Well, first of all, speaking on behalf of PFF and all the great work that everyone does at PFF with our database, it's really totally objective. We try to go by the grades, we try to go by recent production, and it's really about multiple years of production as well as projecting forward in terms of what we might get from a player. And even on this list, right now, Von Miller rates higher than, say, T.J. Watt, Myles Garrett, Nick, and Joey Bosa. So still pretty high on the list when you look at other edge rushers. But I think there is some concern when you see an edge rusher like Khalil Mack. He ranks 18th, higher than Von Miller does on this list. And even our data would support that Von Miller should be higher because over the last 4 years, Von Miller has generated more pressures than Khalil Mack. He has a higher winning percentage rate when it comes to pass rushing. So that means he gets home more on fewer pass rushers than Khalil Mack. I think you can argue that he should be somewhat higher on this list.
Well, certainly great appreciation and respect for everyone at Pro Football Focus. And as the guy who every week quotes some sort of advanced data, I'm going to get nerdy on this show. So I know James is shocked.
Yeah.
I look at this and I think Von Miller, and this is based on history and also projecting forward. Projecting forward is very, very difficult. And that's why if he was around 30, that would maybe be a little bit better for me personally. And here's why. Last year, we saw the decline of sacks, right? But we also know without Bradley Chubb on the other side, that created problems for Von Miller because, again, he's getting double and triple teamed, just like he does most years. Now, I did even bring this up in a press conference with Von Miller that he caused number 1 in the NFL in both in completions caused by his pressure and interceptions caused by his pressure. So obviously he's getting the job done, just not getting home and getting those sacks like some people tend to focus on. But projecting forward, we didn't get his 10 sacks or 12 sacks or 15 sacks like he really can most every single season. And that's where is Father Time catching up with Von Miller. And for me, when we talk about the great players, behind him on the list, Deshaun Watson was behind him on the list. I can't put Deshaun Watson behind Von Miller. As great as that young quarterback is, he's one of the best quarterbacks in this league. For me, bump him a few spots down, put a guy like Deshaun Watson ahead of Von Miller. That would have been from my list. Would have been around 30. So I think it might be just a touch too high, but as Solly pointed out, it's also based a little bit on his history, including the projection going forward.
And that's the hardest part, right, going forward. And Cecil also mentioned, remember, the type of player that Von Miller is, the style of player he is with the speed and the get-off and the bend that's almost unlike anybody else who plays in the game. The quickness and the first step and the speed when you get older are some of the things that go away before a guy that uses power as his predominant way of getting after the quarterback. So if you do play that into effect, maybe he is kind of in the right spot. I feel like he's exactly where he kind of needs to be. I was a little surprised. I thought J.J. Watt was a little higher if I'm going to the edge guys, a little higher than maybe I thought he would be with the last couple of years, the way they've gone. But at the same time, Cecil mentioned what's happened with Vaughn last year with no Bradley Chubb. JJ didn't really have any help of anybody else going after the quarterback down there in Houston either, so he didn't have that luxury of Whitney Merciless going after the quarterback at a rate he's done in seasons past. I do think it was interesting to see Cam Jordan just there, just a little bit above him. I'm a big fan of Cam. I think he's one of the more underrated guys in this league. But if you look at the guys that are above him and the guys that are behind him in terms of edge rushers, I think he actually is right about where he needs to be.
What will it take for Vaughn to get back on track next season and possibly crack the top 20 next year on this list?
Well, yeah, let's face it, his production has to increase over what we saw in 2019 and be more like what it was maybe in the previous 2-3 years. Hard to do that now. Remember, he's entering his 10th NFL season. And so we're asking a player going into his 10th season to be more what he was during his prime when he was literally unstoppable. And I think there's times in games he can still be that. Now, whether he can do that on a week-to-week basis during a 16-game season remains to be seen, but that's part of us trying to project forward. What do we expect from a 10-year veteran as the guys who are going to be blocking him become younger and their stamina is much greater? Can he continue to produce at a very high level like when he was in his prime? I think if you would have to project that, that's probably not going to happen. And that's why you see him probably ranking 25 on our list, which I still think is pretty good when you think about the other edge rushers he's ranked ahead of.
We all need to take a step back and really note how Vaughn is so different from pass rushers today. Pass rushers years ago were 240 pounds. They get around the edge, they get after the quarterback, they got quickness, they got bend. But what is the NFL? As Solly points out, it's younger, bigger, stronger, faster. That's what this league becomes. So now pass rushers look more like Khalil Mack. They look more like Bradley Chubb. They're 275 pounds. So Vaughn is a throwback to what pass rushers used to be like. He's the last of his kind, really, when you talk about that style of rusher. And so, again, projecting forward, what's he going to do? What's he need to do? All those sorts of things. Those are interesting. But I also just want to appreciate the player that he is, because we don't see players like him anymore.
No, not a whole lot. And I don't know if this is part of the equation, Solly, but I don't think contracts come into play and how you guys evaluate these guys. This is a massive year for Von Miller in terms of where his contract stands. And I think he is a motivated guy to go out there and prove to everybody because of kind of the discussion we're having, because he knows where the guaranteed money is lacking moving forward on his deal. You get Bradley Chubb back. They're better on the interior, on the defensive line than they were a season ago. I think you are going to see a better player this year because of all the reasons, Alexis, we just mentioned. I think this is a guy that wants to come out and prove a lot of people wrong. And I think it's setting up with the money situation and the other guys up front there and a second year in Vic Fangio's system, because it was a new system for him a year ago, for everything to kind of add up for Von Miller.
Yeah, real quick, just to answer James' question. On this particular list, it's really about production. It's about how good you are, the kind of impact you make. If we're talking about value, we come out with those lists as well. In terms of where players rate based on value, that's when the contract and how much you're paid versus production, that's where the contract would really come into play.